Kansas State basketball has their first back-to-back win since late November, early December with a blowout win over Oklahoma State, following a top 25 win over West Virginia, a big time for Kansas State basketball this season. What's up, guys? My name's Joe. I make videos about the Cats. Thank you so much for being here. If it's your first time being here, I make videos about the Cats just about every other day, so be sure and stick around and hit that subscribe button. If not, I appreciate you being here and I love you for that. So Kansas State takes down Oklahoma State by 30. 85-57 is the final score. That is a massive statement win. I know Oklahoma State's not great. I won't try to sell you that. I'm not trying to, convince you otherwise. But this is a win over a team that beat you by 13 less than 3 weeks ago, and you did not look competitive in that game. What I'm here to say is this, and I'm not going to sit here and try to blow smoke up your you-know-what and say, we're going to be a tournament team, we're going to be great, we're going to be this and that. I'm not going to try to convince you to think something you're not already. What I will say is this. There are some really good takeaways the last couple weeks about Kansas State basketball, and people should be paying attention to that. People should be discussing this, and I know a lot are, but those that are sitting there saying, you know what, I hate this team, I hate watching this, you got to lie to yourself the last 2 weeks. It's been an exciting thing to watch the last couple games for Kansas State basketball, and it feels like the dudes at least care and they're bought in, like they're moving the right way, they're going about their business the right way. And I think there's a couple different things I want to discuss from last night's game, and even what it means going forward as Kansas State approaches their biggest task of the season, maybe second biggest task of the season after Houston, but it's dang near a toss-up between Iowa State and Hilton. I'm not going to sit here and say that we're going to be favored to win or that we're going to be anywhere within 10 points. It's on the road at Iowa State, one of the best teams in the Big 12, if not the best team when it comes, pound for pound. They're a dang good basketball team. It's going to be a grind for the group. But I still am excited to watch the game and see if they can continue this momentum into that. This is the perfect time to go play Iowa State. The vibes are high, feels like the program's in the right spot, guys are trending in the right direction. Let's go see what it looks like against elite competition. Now, I have a couple takeaways I'll jump into. The first one, I want to say this, because I have some specific stat stuff that I'll do later in the video, but off the rip, I want to say this. I don't need you to be perfect. I don't need you to be the number one team in the country. I don't need you to be the best team in the country on every single given night. That is a luxury that very few fans get every season. That's one fan base every season that knows, hey, no matter what, we're winning this basketball game. We're the best team in college basketball. In 2022, you were dang near that. You were one of the best basketball teams in the country. Any given night, you should be favored. You should be blowing teams out, beating people. You will find a way to get it done with Keys, Keontae, Naquan Tomlin. I understand that not every season is going to be that, and genuinely, this may sound a little bit stupid, but I don't necessarily need you to be that every single season. Like, I understand there's going to be peaks and valleys here and there, but what I do require of you is to be K-State, to show up with energy, to win the games you're supposed to win, take care of home court, go steal a couple on the road, and actually mean that. I know it's been about a year since K-State's won on the road, but what I like out of K-State basketball right now is that every single person on the court is giving their all. Nobody's sitting there saying, well, let me just limber up the court, let me do this. You're not seeing nearly as many blown plays in transition defense. You're not seeing fast break points given up. These dudes are defending their tail off. They're getting after the basketball. They're protecting the paint. They're scoring in the paint. They're rebounding. Like, every single issue we've talked about early in the season that's entirely pissed me off or pissed off the fan base, they are actively working to correct, and you're seeing that show up on game day. Whether that be the corrections in practice, whether that be a good stretch of basketball here and there, they're making the necessary changes, and that deserves to be, talked about. That deserves to be discussed. Like, that is a great thing to see for Kansas State, and I'm happy to be a part of a fan base where the coaches and the players actually care, like, hey, we're going to get this thing right. We're not just going to pivot and say, well, the season's done, I'm out, this sucks, I hate it here. Nobody's doing that. Everybody's saying, you know what, I'm locked in, let's get this thing done. The fan base deserves this. The team deserves this. The coaches deserve this. The players deserve this. If you keep showing up with consistent effort and working your tail off like this, even if the score doesn't show up and say you lose by 10 to Iowa State, say you lose by 12 to Iowa State, say you lose by 3 to Iowa State, if you show up and work your tail off, a lot better teams have lost by more than that. If you continue to show effort and work your tail off with the name on the front of your chest as well as the one on the back, I'll continue to support you. You deserve my time and effort if you're giving me time and effort back. That's the way this thing goes. Let me move over into a little bit, a stat thing, some quotes, some different things I want to talk about. And off the rip, guys, listen to the stat lines because K-State had 5 different people above a plus 20 in terms of plus-minus differential of point differential. That's a huge deal. For those of you that don't understand it, I know it can be kind of a gray water. Basically this, if someone has a plus 10 plus-minus differential, that means with them on the basketball court, the team is 10 points better, at least in the context of that game. So say Oklahoma State, someone has a plus-minus of 7, the team is 7 points better with them on the court. That being said, K-State dominated in that category. They had a few guys that were negative, but overall, listen to this. 5 dudes with more than 25 in terms of a plus-minus. Coleman Hawkins, plus 28. Doug McDaniel leading the team at plus 31. With Doug on the court, we were 31 points better than Oklahoma State. Brendan Hausen, plus 27. Max Jones, plus 26. And this wasn't a typical game for David Gasson, but David Gasson had a plus 27 plus minus. That's a huge deal. His impact was there, even if the stat sheet didn't say David Gasson double-double. David Gasson this. Still had plus 27. Furthermore, beyond that, you got Moby at +7. You got David Castillo at +4. One that confuses me is CJ Jones at 0. We'll talk about CJ. That's kind of a bum stat. I didn't see many issues for CJ on the court, to be honest with you. But a really, really good sign. 5 dudes more than +25 in the plus-minus. That is a good thing to see. Speaking on CJ Jones, the combination of Doug McDaniel, Coleman Hawkins, and CJ Jones, to put this in perspective, they scored 31 points, had 16 total assists between the three, 8 steals, and just 3 turnovers. You're not losing the basketball, 3 turnovers, and those are for guys early in the season, like with Doug, Coleman, and CJ that were kind of turnover prone early on. They're taking care of the basketball, they're making the right reads, they're making the right plays, they're defending their tails off, and they're rebounding. Like, that's a big deal to see. And I think you can keep talking about that with Doug McDaniel. Like I said, +31 is kind of ridiculous, folks. That's a big deal for anybody, but specifically for Doug McDaniel, like, that is one of the best offensive outputs he's had this season. And even in the postgame, Coach Tang praised his leadership, saying, hey, Doug McDaniel's here. Like, he's figured this thing out. The last 2 weeks or so, he's been locked in practice. He's been locked in on the scouting report. And you see that on the court. Like, you're not just seeing it necessarily with him scoring consistently. Like, you're seeing him affect the game in multiple ways. For his size and stature, his energy on defense is incredible. It's something he talked to me about in an interview before the season started, saying, hey, I want to prove that I'm a multifaceted player. I want to rebound. I want to defend. I want to facilitate. I want to do all this stuff. I want to continue that and take the next step. Doug's been an elite defender. And I know that being 5'10", 5'9", whatever Doug stands at, 5'11", doesn't always get you a mark in the score sheet in terms of, okay, this is the guy we're not going to mess with. Doug's going to get picked on a lot. But boy, he has not been that dude this season. The man is forcing steals. He's forcing pressure. The best ball handler on the other team is getting locked down by Doug. You got to like his effort and commitment to it on the defensive end as well as the offensive end. Doug McDaniel's an elite player. And having him next season, like, I don't know if it's been that long, but I think a month ago I thought Doug McDaniel was out the door of the transfer portal. Now I disagree. I think Doug's back. Anything can change in any context of basketball at any given time. Retaining this dude, because it feels like the light's gone on for Doug completely. It seems like he's head strapped on the right way. The dude's locked in. He's making the right plays. You got to keep Doug McDaniel around. That is an elite point guard in the day of college basketball. A guy that's showing up for you. And if he's showing up for you, your team's going to be good. It's the way that Kansas State's been. If Doug McDaniel's cooking, whether that's scoring, whether that's facilitating defense, whatever the case is, if Doug McDaniel's playing his best basketball, Kansas State plays their best basketball. Now, you might ask, what's changed for Kansas State basketball? Because this team stunk. Like 2-3 weeks ago, they stunk. They don't stink anymore. They're a good basketball team now. What they're becoming is a team that nobody wants to see in the regular season. Doesn't matter if they're at the top of the scoreboard or the bottom of the scoreboard, they're going to play you hard. They're going to have consistent effort and energy. And if you're not prepared for Kansas State, if you're trying to overlook them, they're going to beat you. And that's an awesome thing to see. That can transition into more of a, okay, we go on a winning streak here, we make this tournament, we do something here. There's a possibility of that happening. I don't know if it happens consistently. There's still some really good opponents on that schedule. But if this team can get back to 500 in conference play, that's a dang good thing to see. I think that the coaching job here to keep this thing together is not getting talked about enough. I know Coach Tang made some enemies early in the season. I think people were kind of out on Coach Tang. Some still are. I get that. Whatever. You do you, man. But I think that the idea is that there's been some really, really good coaching the last couple weeks. I know that, basketball heads will say, well, they suck on offense. Well, they suck here. They don't do this and that. The one thing that you've seen consistently is, like, they have simplified their game. Coach Tang talked about it. The players talked about it, saying, hey, we were still confused. We had to simplify the game plan. What that means, I have no clue, but you see the success when they're having, like, pin down screens for Brennan Haas to get a wide open three. That stuff's happening consistently, and that's kind of a crazy thing. Like, you're getting dudes open. You're getting dudes schemed up and open for good shots. That wasn't happening 5 games ago. You're also seeing them correct things like, okay, we need to start fast. We need to finish the half strong. We need to start the half strong and then finish the game strong. It's the tale as old as time. Like, if you come out of the gates hot, you need to stay hot. You can't just taper off towards the end of the half. Like, for Kansas State, you got a good look. You got a turnover. You go get a bucket. David Gasson tip in at the end of the half. Then you come out of the second half firing. You keep that stretch and finish the basketball game strong. These are things that good teams and good coaching does. If you can put this stuff together, if you can sustain basketball for 40 minutes, you will win games. And I know that the energy is something we've talked about a lot. It seems like the energy is back. There's no question in my mind of how much these guys want to play for Kansas State. Credit that to Max Jones. Credit that to Brennan Haas, Coleman Hawkins, Doug McDaniel. Everybody on this court wants to be on the basketball court. I know we haven't seen Buddy and a couple other dudes on the bench. Honestly, at this point, your rotation's set. You have the guys that want to play. And one thing I will say this, a guy that isn't playing this season that's having impact already, how about Memphis transfer Tyreke Smith? Coach Tang specifically mentioned, hey, we have another big, strong, physical guy in practice working his tail off. Like, he's raised the energy and competitiveness to a whole new heights. That's something you won't see come to fruition until next year. We don't know the type of player he is. We've seen some of the highlights here and there for different teams, but if he's a guy in practice that's showing up and making the whole team better, you got to pat the kid on the back. That's a huge deal for Tyreke Smith. So shout out to Tyreke Smith. Good job by the coaching staff bringing him in. That feels like a good addition. And then the last couple things here. Guys, I'm just going to sit back and say I know ball. My Moby stock is starting to mature, folks. As president of the Moby fan club, I'm excited to see it. Had his best game as a Wildcat. In 12 minutes, Moby put up 8 points, 3 rebounds, 3 steals. The guy is an active defender. And I know that sometimes there's been the knock of, well, Moby just doesn't know what he's doing. Moby doesn't know if he's in the right spot or not. Coach Stang even talked about it, expanded on it for about 2 minutes towards the end of his press conference and said, hey, Moby, the game started to slow down for. He's like the last 2 games, even though he was good the week before, even though he was decent against Baylor, even though he was decent against West Virginia, the game has still looked a little bit too fast for him just because, he'll get passes and they'll kind of bobble off his hands. He'll go up for a rebound and he'll tip it out to somebody else. There wasn't much control. There wasn't a ton of, there was energy, but it just wasn't consistent focus. Coach Stang talked about it. Hey, the game slowed down for Moby in this game against Oklahoma State. Moby continuing to develop and get better is going to be better and better for Kansas State. He's one you got to keep around for next year. And Coach Stang mentioned, he's like, hey, man, I don't think I've coached a better athlete in my entire career. That's an insane comment for a dude that's coached college basketball for 20 plus years. That's an incredible compliment, and the kid is young. He's got time to develop at Kansas State. You retain him, you keep developing him. He's got a good shot from the free throw line. He went 2 for 2 from the free throw line in this game. Had some good defensive effort where he's poking the ball loose, going fast break transition. And then you see the otherworldly athleticism. The dude can just fly. He floats. Coach Stang said, you know what? For that dunk, the dude just floated. You can't coach that. That's just a God-given ability. And Moby's stock is continuing to rise. And I love what I'm seeing out of him. I don't know how much he'll play against Iowa State. I know that they've kind of had some reservations of playing Moby against KU, against Houston. Moby might get out there and have some minutes. He might not next week. But either way, he's on the right path towards being a good basketball player. And I'm excited to see that, man. I'm pumped about that addition. And then lastly, I want to end it with a quote from Oklahoma State head coach Steve Lutz. And this is specific to Coleman's turnaround three-point shot, shot clock buzzer beater. That play. The play that we all know. SportsCenter top 10. It was number 7 on the SportsCenter top 10. Coleman Hawkins hits a wild 360 turnaround with 2 seconds left on the shot clock after a bit of an errant pass from C.J. Jones. And Coleman switches it, buries it. And he let Oklahoma State's bench know about it too. That was pretty sweet. But after the game, Lutz was asked about the play, and he basically said this. He said, luck favors the team that works the hardest. So shout out Kansas State. Some people are going to sit there and say, well, it wasn't lucky. We won the game. He's just referring to the one play. There's an element of luck when you're hitting a turnaround 363 from 40 feet, almost stepping out of bounds with a second left. There's an element of luck. We can admit that. But what I'm saying is this. 4 games ago, there's not a single coach in college basketball that would say Kansas State showed up with good effort. I don't think Jerome Tang would say we showed up with good effort. So it's cool to see that we're in a spot 2 weeks later where a couple things have changed. The guys are doing the right thing. We're in a spot where teams are noticing, hey, these dudes show up. They're working their tails off. Fortune favors the dude that works the hardest. Kansas State's in that category. But guys, that's going to do it for today. We'll see what happens at Iowa State. It'll be a tough task. I'll be back to talk more this week about K-State football, K-State basketball. Thank you all for the support, and I will talk to you soon. Go Cats.